St. Petersburg, a city that stands as a testament to both human grandeur and the depths of human misery. Its streets are lined with opulent buildings that tell tales of a glorious past, yet they are juxtaposed with rundown areas that speak of neglect and decay. A city of grandeur and misery. Here, the rich and the poor live side by side, their lives intertwined, yet worlds apart. The wealthy bask in luxury, while the impoverished struggle to survive, their dreams crushed under the weight of their circumstances. It is here we meet Rodion Raskolnikov, a young man drowning in his own despair. Once a promising student, he now wanders the streets, his mind a labyrinth of dark thoughts and unfulfilled potential. He is a former student, now utterly impoverished. His clothes are tattered, his pockets empty. The weight of his poverty is a constant burden, pressing down on him, suffocating him. His tiny room is a reflection of his chaotic mind, cramped, suffocating. The walls close in on him, the clutter a physical manifestation of his inner turmoil. Papers are scattered everywhere, remnants of a time when he still had hope. We see glimpses of his intelligence, his potential. He reads voraciously, writes with a fervor that hints at a brilliant mind, but these moments are fleeting, overshadowed by the crushing reality of his existence. But they are obscured by his poverty, his hunger, his isolation. He is gaunt, his face hollowed by hunger. He stares out of his window, watching the world go by, feeling more and more disconnected from it. Raskolnikov is haunted by a sense of injustice. He sees the world as a place where the innocent suffer and the wicked thrive. This sense of injustice gnaws at him, driving him to the brink of madness. He sees the suffering of the poor, the exploitation of the innocent. The streets are filled with people in ragged clothes, their faces etched with despair. The market is crowded with downtrodden individuals, each one a testament to the harsh realities of life. He sees himself as one of them. He walks among the poor, feeling their pain, their hopelessness. He looks at his reflection in a window and sees a man who has been beaten down by life, a man who has lost his way. But he also sees himself as something more. He believes he is different, that he is destined for something greater. This belief sets him apart, gives him a sense of purpose, however twisted it may be. He nurses a dangerous idea, a theory that sets him apart. He believes that some people are extraordinary, that they are above the laws that bind ordinary men. This idea consumes him, becomes his obsession. He believes he is extraordinary, above the laws that bind ordinary men. He sees himself as a man of great potential, a man who is destined to do great things. This belief gives him a sense of superiority, a sense of purpose. He sees the pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, as a parasite. She is a vile, greedy woman who preys on the vulnerable, exploiting their desperation for her own gain. A vile, greedy woman who preys on the vulnerable. She argues with her clients, squeezing every last penny out of them. Her room is dark and cluttered, a reflection of her twisted soul. He convinces himself that her murder would be a service to humanity, a necessary evil. He believes that by killing her, he would be freeing the world from a parasite, doing a great service to humanity. This twisted logic becomes his obsession, his only escape from the crushing reality of his life. He writes about it obsessively, paces his small room, consumed by the idea. He is a man on the edge, teetering between despair and delusion. His mind is a battleground, torn between his sense of justice and his growing madness. This is where his journey truly begins. A journey that will take him to the darkest corners of his mind. A journey that will test his beliefs, his sanity, and his very soul. The seed of Raskolnikov's horrific plan has been planted. It started as a mere whisper in the back of his mind, a dark thought that grew louder and more insistent with each passing day. The idea took root, fed by his desperation and the crushing weight of his circumstances. He paces his tiny room, his mind consumed by the details. Every corner of the room seems to close in on him, the clutter a physical manifestation of his chaotic thoughts. He rehearses every step, every word, every possible outcome, trying to anticipate and control the uncontrollable. He justifies his actions with cold, intellectual reasoning. He tells himself that this is not just a crime, but a necessary act. He believes that by removing one worthless life, he can save many others. His mind twists and turns, finding logic in the illogical, morality in the immoral. He believes he is not a murderer, but a liberator. In his mind, he is a hero, a man of action in a world of inaction. He convinces himself that he is above the common man. that his intellect and willpower set him apart and justify his actions. He is removing a blight on society. The old pawnbroker is a parasite, feeding off the misery of others. By ending her life, he believes he is performing a public service, cleansing the world of her malevolence. The day of the murder arrives sweltering and oppressive. The heat is suffocating, mirroring the intensity of his inner turmoil. Every step he takes feels heavy, laden with the weight of what he's about to do. Raskolnikov is in a feverish daze, detached from reality. His mind is a whirlwind of fear, excitement, and dread. He moves through the streets like a ghost, barely aware of the world around him, his focus entirely on the task ahead. He goes through the motions with a chilling sense of purpose. Every action is deliberate, every movement calculated. The axe in his hand feels both foreign and familiar, a tool of his will. He enters the pawnbroker's apartment, the axe heavy in his hand. The room is dimly lit, shadows dancing on the walls. He can hear his own heartbeat, loud and insistent as he approaches his unsuspecting victim. He strikes again and again. The deed is done. The room is filled with the sound of his labored breathing, the metallic scent of blood hanging in the air. He stands over the lifeless body, the reality of his actions slowly sinking in. He is no longer a powerless student. He is a murderer. The transformation is complete, the line crossed. He looks at his hands, now stained with blood, and feels a strange mix of power and revulsion. But the rush of power is fleeting. The initial thrill of his actions quickly fades, replaced by a hollow emptiness. The reality of what he has done begins to weigh on him, the enormity of his crime sinking in. It is quickly replaced by a wave of nausea and terror. His body reacts violently, rejecting the horror of his actions. He feels sick, his mind reeling, as the full impact of his crime hits him. He has crossed a line. There is no going back. The man he was is gone, replaced by someone he barely recognizes. He stares at his reflection, seeing a stranger looking back at him. He can never go back. The darkness has claimed him, and the path ahead is uncertain and fraught with danger. He walks away, leaving behind the remnants of his old life, haunted by the shadows of his actions. The aftermath of the murder is a descent into hell. Raskolnikov is plagued by nightmares, hallucinations. His world shrinks. He is a prisoner in his own mind. The guilt is suffocating. He tries to convince himself that it was justified, that he did the right thing. But the bloodstains on his hands are a constant reminder of the truth. He is falling apart. He becomes paranoid, suspicious of everyone. He sees accusations in every glance, every word. He is haunted by the memory of the pawnbroker, her eyes staring accusingly. He is trapped in a labyrinth of his own making with no escape. Section 4. The Cat and the Mouse. Porfiry Petrovich's Mind Games. Enter Porfiry Petrovich, the investigating magistrate. He is a man of keen intellect and sharp instincts, always dressed in a manner that exudes authority and control. His office is a reflection of his mind, meticulously organized, yet filled with an undercurrent of tension. He is a shrewd, perceptive man. His eyes miss nothing, and his mind is always several steps ahead. He has an uncanny ability to read people, to see through their facades and understand their true intentions. He suspects Raskolnikov from the start, but he has no evidence. His suspicion is based on intuition, on the subtle cues that Raskolnikov unknowingly gives away. Porfiry knows that a direct accusation would be futile without concrete proof. He engages in a psychological game of cat and mouse with Raskolnikov. This is not just an investigation. It is a battle of wits, a test of endurance. Porfiry uses every tool at his disposal: logic, psychology, and even manipulation. Porfiry probes, prods, and provokes. His questions are designed to unsettle, to dig deep into Raskolnikov's psyche. He knows that the mind can be a fragile thing, and he aims to exploit that fragility. He wants to break Raskolnikov down. He wants a confession, but more than that, he wants Raskolnikov to confront his own guilt, to face the reality of his actions. Porfiry believes that true justice comes not just from punishment, but from self-realization. He toys with Raskolnikov's guilt, his paranoia. He knows that Raskolnikov is already tormented by his conscience, and he uses that to his advantage. Every word, every gesture is calculated to increase the pressure. He becomes a manifestation of Raskolnikov's own tortured conscience. In many ways, Porfiry is not just an external adversary, but a reflection of Raskolnikov's inner turmoil. He embodies the moral and psychological conflict that Raskolnikov is grappling with. Raskolnikov is caught in a web of his own making. His crime has ensnared him in a trap from which there seems to be no escape. Every move he makes only tightens the noose around him. He tries to outsmart Porfiry to maintain his facade of innocence. He believes that if he can just keep his composure, he can outwit the magistrate. But Porfiry is always one step ahead, always ready to counter Raskolnikov's moves. But the pressure is relentless. Porfiry's tactics are unyielding, his questions unending. The constant scrutiny begins to wear Raskolnikov down, chipping away at his resolve. He is being driven to the brink. The psychological strain is immense, and Raskolnikov finds himself teetering on the edge of a breakdown. His mind is a battleground, and he is losing the fight. He knows that confession, surrender, is his only escape from this torment. The realization dawns on him that the only way to find peace is to admit his guilt, to face the consequences of his actions. In the end, it is not just about evading the law, but about finding redemption. Section 5. A Glimmer of Light. Sonia Marmeladova and the Burden of Confession. Amidst the darkness, a glimmer of light emerges. Sonia Marmeladova. She is a young woman forced into prostitution to support her family. Yet she possesses a purity of spirit that captivates Raskolnikov. She sees the good in him, the humanity buried beneath the guilt and despair. She listens without judgment as he confesses his sins. Sonia represents redemption through suffering. She urges him to confess, to seek atonement for his crimes. She becomes his lifeline, his only hope for salvation. He is drawn to her compassion, her unwavering faith. In her, he sees a path to redemption, but can he find the strength to take it? Section 6. Justice or Punishment. A sentence handed down, a soul laid bare. The weight of his guilt becomes unbearable. Raskolnikov confesses to the murder. He is sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. He welcomes the punishment, seeing it as a necessary step towards atonement. The courtroom is a blur. He is barely aware of his surroundings. He is detached, numb. He has confessed, but he is far from redeemed. He is still haunted by his actions, by the memory of the pawnbroker and her sister, Lizaveta, an innocent caught in the crossfire. His journey has just begun.